Why are you still?
Hey, because she's not hot.
All right, we are finally. Can y'all pull those blinds up so we get a little more light?
Yes, master.
Mine must have been like 5.
Bennett, I got the.
Thank you.
Rob.
No, I have to tell you about the movie.
All right, we are finally done with plants.
Yes. Finally.
No more plants.
Are we going to humans now?
Now we're going to animals.
Dang it.
We spend much of the rest of the year on animals. If you like animals,
No.
you do well. If you hate animals, then you hate yourself because you're an animal.
Good one.
I hate animals.
I'm a robot.
All right. So this is page 692, section 24.1. Open your book, 692, section 24.1. Okay. This section talks about what an animal is. And animals have lots of characteristics that distinguish them. One of the characteristics is whether they have a backbone or not. Animals that have a backbone, they're called vertebrates. Here's our backbone. Vertebrates include fish, amphibians like a frog, reptiles like a tortoise, birds, birds, and dinosaurs are reptiles. Birds like a chicken, and mammals like a dog or a human. So those are your vertebrates: fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. They all have backbones. All the other animals are invertebrates. Okay? That includes insects, that includes sponges, that includes jellyfish, that includes all the worms, anything that without a backbone. There's actually a lot more things without a backbone than with. So we say that those are invertebrates. Now, a lot of your invertebrates have exoskeletons. An exoskeleton is a hard structure on the outside. That's an insect exoskeleton right there. A cicada, very good. Sometimes you see the exoskeletons on the side of a tree or something like that on a leaf. It provides support and protection.
But a hermit crab's shell.
That's an exoskeleton. Absolutely.
Even if they leave
job. Well,
They have an exoskeleton anyway.
Hermit crabs will move from one shell to another. They actually have an exoskeleton plus their shell.
No, they have
They have an exoskeleton and then they also get a shell.
Can't hear it.
Those are some exoskeletons of some cicadas.
Ugh,
Who took this video?
gross.
I don't know who took this.
Did you do it, bro?
No.
Filthy.
Yeah, you did. So it's really annoying.
Was that you?
You can see a body, man. You should go back and get some.
I don't know where I got that.
That was me.
Or his body.
Now your endoskeleton is different. It sits underneath with soft outside. And the endoskeleton can also be for protection. For instance, you have your ribs here, that part of your skeleton that protects the heart and lungs. You have your skull that protects the brain. You have your vertebrae that protect your spinal cord. So the skeleton, even an endoskeleton, can serve for protection, provides support for the body. Obviously, if you didn't have bones, you'd just be a blob of person on the floor. It wouldn't be able to stand up. It'd be kind of weird. Provide an internal brace for muscles to pull against. One of the major things is the muscles attached to the bones. And the muscles, when they move, when they contract, can allow for movement of the bones. The reason why your hand comes up like this, why you can do that, is because you're contracting this muscle, the biceps muscle, and it causes the movement. We're going to spend a whole chapter studying how muscles work. But so the internal or endoskeleton is what a lot of organisms have. Usually, just kind of a rule of thumb, small organisms can get away with an exoskeleton, like an ant or something like that. But big organisms need an endoskeleton. One of the problems with an exoskeleton is if you're real big, the exoskeleton is just so big that it gets real heavy, and the organism can't carry it around. So you never see insects get real big. The giant insects you see on a movie or something like that, those things could never move. The exoskeleton will be too heavy. So the biggest ones that you see are like big crabs and lobsters, and they're in the ocean, and their exoskeleton is held up by the water. So they can grow, you can get a lobster that's that big because the water helps support its exoskeleton.
Spiders.
Some spiders can get that big.
Like that,
Camels.
There's that one that can eat a bird.
But you never find a spider or a lobster as big as a whale. They just don't get that.
No, not like one of the
Oh my god.
Okay.
Worst part of it.
Page 695. When animals reproduce, they have two types of fertilization. They have internal and external fertilization. Now, external fertilization is when your sperm and eggs are sprayed out into the water. Fish do this, amphibians do it, sponges do it. Here is a sponge, and it's squirting out sperm. Sperm is coming up out of the sponge, and another sponge, maybe off to the side, will squirt out eggs. Or, actually, I'm sorry, sponges usually don't squirt out eggs. These sperm will swim and go into the next sponge, and inside the next sponge will be eggs that can be fertilized. But that's an example of external fertilization, whenever you put the sperm or eggs out into the water. Fish do this. Fish spawn, if you've ever heard of spawning. They swim to a certain part, and then they just spray their sperm out into the water and spray their eggs out into the water and hope that the sperm and eggs meet. And often they don't, and they die. But sometimes they do and form eggs, form a zygote. When the sperm fertilizes the egg, you have a zygote, and the zygote eventually grows into a fish. So that's external fertilization.
Salmon love fish eggs.
Salmon, yeah. Salmon swim to a certain stream every year, to a certain part of a stream to spawn. Now, internal fertilization had to be evolved for organisms that live on land. If you live on land, you just can't spray your sperm onto the ground because they just sit there. They can't swim around. And they'll die and they'll dry out. So land animals had to develop internal fertilization, which is having sex, where the male inserts the sperm into the female, and they aren't going to dry out in there. And we'll spend a whole chapter talking about sex later. Yes! Can't wait for that. Now, animals can also reproduce asexually. Asexually means no sex, obviously. A meaning no. No sex. A single parent produces offspring that are genetically identical, and there's 4 ways of doing it. One way is called budding. That's when an organism, this is a hydra, just grows a new organism off of its side that's an exact copy of the parent. We can't do that. Wouldn't it be cool if the little Mr. Willis budded off of me?
No,
He grew up, right, and looked just like me?
That would be
cool. And then he could teach while I played golf.
Oh, what if you wanted to play golf?
Yeah.
He can't play golf. He has to
He's
teach.
gonna jump.
I'm not going to let him.
He could just.
But he'd be the same person as you. Why would
What if
he
next
beat
to
you up?
Yeah,
He can't beat me up
Why?
because I'm stronger.
But you're the exact
He's the
same.
original, man.
Original.
The
What if the other guy's the original?
fragmentation is when organisms come apart into pieces. Sometimes some animals can do this. If you take a sponge and you break it up into a bunch of little bits, the little bits can each grow into sponges. And so that's called fragmentation.
Can't worms do that?
Some worms can, like planarians, flatworms. If you cut them into pieces, each piece will grow back.
Snakes.
Snakes can regenerate small portions.
Iguanas.
Iguanas can grow a
A
tail.
tail. Yeah.
Defense mechanism.
Regeneration is if you lose an arm or a limb, it'll grow back. That's regeneration.
Okay.
So here we see a starfish who's growing back 3 of its rays that have been lost. Some fish or something ate it,
That's invented.
but they grow back. And then here's a big word you've never heard before probably, parthenogenesis.
I just heard it this morning.
Parthenogenesis usually happens in insects. And what they'll do is they'll lay eggs. And if the eggs get fertilized by a male, that's sexual reproduction. But if the eggs don't get fertilized by the male, each egg will grow into an exact clone of the mom.
Ew. That's weird.
And that's called parthenogenesis. So, like for some insects, like some ants I know can do this. They'll lay the eggs. If a male comes and fertilizes them, great. They'll develop into males or females and have a lot of variation because of the sex. But if the male doesn't fertilize them, each of them are just like the mom.
Those are weird.
Yeah, that comes in handy so you don't have to have sex to reproduce.
Is that why they have a queen ant instead of a king ant?
Well, I don't know. No, the queen does lay all the eggs. She has to make. I'm not exactly sure which ants can do it and
Why
which
is there only one queen?
can't. What's that?
Like, why do they only have one queen? Why don't they have like a ton of them so they could like increase?
Because the queen is specialized for reproduction. She's a reproductive.
How is
Can
the
you-
queen born?
Yeah, does it have to come
How
from
is it
another
different?
queen?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know why she's different from the rest of them. Something with the development of the ants. I'm not sure. Fertilization videos. This is when the sperm fertilizes the egg.
You have video documentation?
Oh yeah.
No, it's more than documentation.
What?
It's more than
It's like
documentation.
lava.
Because it's a lot.
Here we go. These are sea urchin eggs. Each little dot you see is a sperm cell. And each big circle is the egg.
It's a big job.
Sperm
it?
surround sea urchin eggs and lock onto the egg membrane. Fusion of the membranes of a sperm and an egg triggers a cortical reaction. The jelly-like vitelline layer quickly swells away from the egg membrane and creates a fertilization membrane that blocks entry of additional sperm. Fertilization combines the haploid sets of chromosomes of sperm and egg into a diploid zygote. It also activates the egg, triggering subsequent embryonic development.
You can't really see the zygote.
The zygote's the big.
If you squint your eyes.
The big. This whole thing's a zygote.
You can't see that.
It just turns into a zygote when it gets fertilized.
See that little
What if-
clear layer that pushes outward?
You mean the cortical reaction?
Squirt cow.
This line here.
It's the fertilization.
That keeps sperm, more than one sperm, from fertilizing the egg. All these sperms are trying to fertilize the egg,
What would happen?
but once one
Yeah.
gets in, the others are pushed away by that cortical
What
reaction.
What
would
if
happen
two
it
got
wasn't
in?
fertilized?
It doesn't
If
matter.
two got in, then the egg would have too many chromosomes and would die.
Oh.
Wouldn't be like extra smart.
It needs the
Yeah,
right
maybe
number
like
of
3
chromosomes
people
to
made it,
survive.
maybe.
This is so ethical.
Sometimes that happens.
Einstein egg.
Family Guy fertilization.
Yes.
What? Seriously?
Dear Diane, it seems the domestic overseers are plotting against me. Their plans somehow relate to the anniversary of my escape from the womb. I'm still haunted by the memories of how I came to be incarcerated in that amniotic attica. As I recall, it was every potential man for himself. The target objective thanks to the peerless intrepidity I developed at testicular boot camp. But it was a trap. I was imprisoned in that uterine gulag for 9 grueling months. Day 171, I I've sprouted at our finger, counting the one from yesterday. I'm up to 11. As the months of solitude passed, I began to go insane. It seemed my prison cell was getting smaller and smaller. I was quite sure that soon I would be dead. But then, a miracle. There was a light at the end of the tunnel. I rushed to freedom, but suddenly I was ambushed by a mysterious man in white. The man in white. Of course. He must be the higher professional of whom they spoke. He failed to thwart my escape into the outside world, and now, 1 year hence, he's returning to rectify his mistake and put me back in the womb.
That's what I like.
I love Family Guy. Okay, so that's fertilization. Did you get it?
Yeah.
Sperm fertilizing the egg. Now, here's what you have to write about if you get this essay. I think. I'm not sure exactly. But if you turn to page 696. The development of the animal goes in a series of stages. After fertilization, here the sperm fertilize the egg. Then you have what? What's it called after fertilization?
Zygote.
A zygote. Very good. A zygote. Then the zygote starts to divide. It divides by mitosis, where the cells copy themselves. You go from 1 cell to 2. There's the 2-cell stage. And from 2 to 4. 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024. Then pretty soon you have a hollow ball of cells. I want you to notice something. As this thing's dividing, the cells get smaller and smaller. We call these successive divisions cleavage. That's the name of it. As these cells are dividing and the cells are getting smaller and smaller, that's called cleavage.
Nice. What is this for? Like a animal or is this for?
It's for animal. All animals go through this. All animals go through this.
So this is
At one point in your life, this is what you looked like. You were a hollow ball of cells
Called a blastula.
called a blastula. That was about 2 weeks after fertilization. After your parents had sex.
Ew.
My mom's a virgin.
So here's Jesus.
He's the second coming. What's going to happen now is this blastula is going to start caving in on one side. Almost like if it were, now they've cut this in half so you can see inside, but in actuality this is a hollow ball of cells that goes all the way around. It's like a basketball. Now imagine if the basketball were flat and you just took one side of it and pushed it in. Then it'd look like that. And we call that thing a gastrula. It's a hollow ball of cells with one side pushed in. Now if you notice, one layer of cells is on the outside now, and there's a layer of cells on the inside. We have different names for these layers of cells that you have to know. The outer layer is called the ectoderm. The inner layer is called the endoderm.
Really?
The ectoderm ends up forming your skin and your nervous system, or the skin and the nervous system of the organism. The endoderm ends up forming the digestive tube, the tube that runs through you where food goes through you. Did you know food goes all the way through you? It goes in through your mouth and out through your butt.
What?
I actually did not know that.
No,
Does.
that's crazy.
It does.
Oh,
Swallow a nickel and it'll come right out. Okay,
Yeah.
later. You have to sift through the feces. It's probably not.
Might be hard to
fun.
pass that through.
Now you see this hole right here where I'm sticking my finger?
Oh.
Yeah.
That hole either becomes the mouth of the organism or the anus of the organism.
Anus.
Ew. It's the anus. The mouth might be
I
gross.
wish I could get there.
So it goes zygote, cleavage, blastula, gastrula. That's the stages of formation. Video footage.
Fertilization occurs when a sperm cell penetrates the egg cell, forming a new cell called a zygote. The zygote divides by mitosis and cell division to form two cells in a process called cleavage. The two cells that result from cleavage then divide to form 4 cells, then 8 cells, and so on, until a cell-covered, fluid-filled ball called a blastula is formed. The cells on one side of the blastula then move inward to form a gastrula, a structure made up of 2 layers of cells with an opening at one end. The layer of cells on the outer surface of the gastrula is called the ectoderm. The layer of cells lining the inner surface is called the endoderm. In some animals, the development of the gastrula progresses until a layer of cells called the mesoderm is formed between the ectoderm and the endoderm. After the formation of mesoderm, development continues with each cell differentiating into specialized tissues.
Now what's going to happen here, you see those cells, those mesoderm cells, those red cells. What happened was those red cells are cells usually that break off of the endoderm. They break off of the endoderm and they float into the middle, into the space between the 2 layers. And those mesoderm cells become your muscles and your circulatory system and all your other organs, your pancreas and your reproductive organs and your kidneys, your liver, very good, your lungs. All that's formed from mesoderm. So mesoderm forms most of your organs. In this green layer, that's endoderm. That forms the digestive tube. In the yellow layer, that's ectoderm. That forms what? Do you remember?
Your nervous tissues and skin.
Skin and nervous system. Very good. Now, you only see one opening right now. That opening, again, is the mouth
Or the anus.
what will happen is this green will spread out so that there's an opening on the other side of the organism. It takes a while for that opening to grow. And this thing will continue to grow and grow, and after many, many months, it starts to look like an actual, if it's a person, if it's human, it looks like a person after a while. But that's the development that occurs in the first few days or weeks of an animal. Every animal, except for sponges, goes through this.
That guy sounded like the guy from Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are the 3 layers: endoderm, ectoderm, mesoderm. I already told you what those 3 layers do. Again, ectoderm on the outside, endoderm on the inside, and mesoderm in the middle. Meso, I always remember meso, middle, they both start with M. Mesoderm becomes muscle, circulatory, excretory, respiratory systems. Ectoderm, skin and nervous system. Endoderm, digestive organs and digestive lining. And that makes sense because that's your throat and your stomach, the food goes through. Video footage?
Yeah.
Here's it actually happening in a mouse.
The zygote, as the fertilized cell is called, divides to become 2 cells. And then these divide to become 4. Then 8. And so on.
That was greatly sped up.
How did they get that to happen? Like,
You can do it in a dish. Just have a sperm fertilize a mouse egg and watch it grow if you give it plenty of nutrients. More video footage.
Development of the sea urchin from a zygote shows the sequence in which most animal embryos develop. In the earliest stages of embryo development, Continuous cell divisions in a zygote result in a hollow ball of cells called a blastula. With each cell division, the cells become smaller. As the embryo continues to grow, some of the cells of the blastula fold inward, forming the gastrula. All animal embryos, except sponges, pass through this gastrula stage. This opening becomes the mouth in protostomes, such as worms and insects, or the anus in deuterostomes, such as birds and mammals. The third layer of cells, called the mesoderm, develops between the endoderm and ectoderm of the gastrula. In deuterostomes, the mesoderm is formed from clumps of cells that break off from the endoderm. The mesoderm gives rise to muscles, reproductive organs, and circulatory vessels.
You remember when you looked like that?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, back in the day.
You don't remember. This is good. It shows those cells breaking off right there. Breaks off from the inside and kind of move outward. More video footage. Oh, this is gastrulation. This is the anus forming. This is how your butthole formed.
Later, when individual cells are too small to see them clearly, the process of gastrulation rearranges the single layer of cells in the blastula to form a three-layered gastrula. Cells at the vegetal pole invaginate, they buckle inward, forming an indentation called the blastopore. The embryo is now called a gastrula. Around the blastopore, mesenchyme cells break away and migrate into the blastocele.
See the hole there? Do you think we form mouth first or butt first?
Butt.
But.
Butt first. Ask your parents that tonight, see if they know.
No, really not.
Good dinner conversation.
Ask at dinner.
I asked my mom for a ripened ovary the other day.
Oh yeah? Okay, this is looking down the side of it, watching the butthole form.
Oh, what?
The video picks up the frog embryo late in gastrulation. Cleavage has produced numerous cells too small to be seen individually. The cells roll over the lip of the blastopore and into the interior of the gastrula. Inside, lighter colored yolk-laden cells that originated at the vegetal pole form the endoderm of the rudimentary digestive tract. Cells from the animal pole spread over the embryo and form ectoderm. In between, a layer of mesoderm is taking shape.
That's a frog's butt.
Ew.
Right there.
Alright, first time I've seen that.
Frog's butthole.
That was a frog.
That's going to be a frog.
Oh, wait. I doubt it.
Okay. So make sure tonight that you read 24.1. And we're going to start a video on life in general that just kind of goes over some of the stuff we've already done, and then it introduces some of the stuff on animals that we're about to do. And it's going to take 2 periods to watch this video. So we'll start it today and finish it tomorrow. Willis out.
Should I video the video?
No, don't video the video.
8 minutes.